So it should be pretty clear to everybody by now that the left simply isn't going to tell you the truth, no matter what. No matter how serious the situation is, no matter what the implications of the outcome of an event is, like the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, they're going to lie, they are going to omit, they are going to twist and convolute the facts and the evidence, and simply just flat out tell you that what you see with your own eyes and ears and hear is not reality, and that whatever they tell you to believe is reality. This was an article published by CNN in sort of the middle of the Kenosha riots last year. And obviously, you can tell by the caption here, a black man shot in the back. We're talking about Jacob Blake, a teenage shooting suspect, referring to Kyle Rittenhouse, a city in flames, Kenosha, the week that shook Kenosha and the county. Okay, so that's a pretty typical headline from CNN, right? This is another typical caption. So this article was published yesterday by CNN. The writer is John Blake, person of color, and then the premise of his article is simply what you would expect, that America is systemically racist and all of its systems are designed to protect white privilege and white supremacy, and Kyle Rittenhouse is simply just another white angry man who is a threat to people of color, just like the caption reads. There is nothing more frightening in America today than a white angry man. Really? Is that a fact? Well, I seem to remember just yesterday that a person of color, Darrell Brooks, or Darrell Brooks, however you pronounce his first name, I really don't give a shit because he's a piece of garbage. Another headline from CNN, police identify the driver, they say plowed into a Waukesha Christmas parade, leaving 5 people dead and 48 injured. Okay, how come you're not mentioning his race? Now, in all fairness, later on in the article, they do identify him by name, and then they post a mugshot of him, but they don't mention his race. Whenever it's black on white crime, they don't mention the race. Black on black crime hardly ever gets reported, if ever. The only time crime is reported by the mainstream media is when it's white on black crime. Not even crime. I mean, even if it's just, especially with regards to police work. If a police officer has to use force, even if and especially when it's justified, like with the Jacob Blake shooting, that's where all of this stemmed from. Okay, like with the Officer Matthew Dagas incident with Amari Johnson in La Mesa, California. Those are all prime examples. Anytime a white police officer uses any level of force, even if they don't use force, even if they just end up having to talk to a person of color, it's never justified because of racism. Because according to the left, the only motivation a white police officer has to make contact with a person of color is racism. They're trying to jam them up and somehow falsely accuse, fabricate probable cause, or whatever the case is, simply because white police officers are racist. That's the narrative. And it's also the narrative that white people are the biggest threat to people of color and also to women, by the way. But here's some of the things they don't want you to know about Darrell Brooks, his criminal history. These charges were filed on the 5th of this month. Resisting or obstructing an officer, misdemeanor. Bail jumping, felony. Second-degree recklessly endangering safety, domestic abuse assessments, felony. Disorderly conduct, domestic abuse assessments, misdemeanor. Battery, domestic abuse assessments, misdemeanor. Okay, so clearly this guy is a model citizen. He's a productive, competent member of society. And the only reason he ran over 50 people at a parade was probably because of systemic racism and white privilege, and he had no other choice because white people forced him into this situation, right? I mean, that's next, right? That's the story that's coming. Felony bail jumping. Okay, so again, these charges were filed on the 5th, so he's already had an issue with bond. Look at his bond amount. Why was his bond amount so low? $1,000. If any of you have ever been to jail and have had to bond out of jail and you went through a bondsman, you only have to pay 10% of the bond to the bondsman. So if that's what he did, he got out of jail for $100 on 2 felonies and 3 misdemeanors. And those charges included domestic violence. You're not supposed to be able to bond out of jail. I mean, I don't know how quickly he did. But I know in Idaho that you have to stay at least one night in jail and see a judge before you're released on anything domestic violence related. I don't know why the prosecutors ask for such a low bond, but I'm assuming it's because of the whole bail reform discussion and the idea that people of color receive higher bond amounts and harsher sentences disproportionately for the same types of crimes as white people, which is total bullshit. Okay, there's no evidence to prove that at all. But because the woke mob is screaming about it in the middle of the street as they're chanting and rioting and throwing bricks and Molotov cocktails and burning down businesses and hurting people, that means it must be legit, right? And even if it's not legit, we have to acquiesce to it, lest we suffer the wrath of the mob. Instead of paying no mind to the nonsense, okay, to the garbage that's being spewed by the mob and by the rest of the left, and just doing your job as a prosecutor and not abdicating your duty to the taxpayers to protect and serve, to enforce the law, to prosecute real criminals, actual criminals, not Kyle Rittenhouse. He's not a criminal. He was defending himself. But, you know, there are still people who actually believe that Kyle Rittenhouse shot 3 black people. Despite the national attention that this case got, okay, all of the video footage that was played 100 times of Kyle Rittenhouse shooting Joseph Rosenbaum, Anthony Huber, and Gage Grosskreutz, who are all white, people still believe, because of the rhetoric on the left about him being a white supremacist, that he shot 3 black people. Okay, that's how ignorant people are. And those are the same people that are rioting and looting. Those are the same people that after a justified shooting, like the one with Jacob Blake, go out and riot and loot and protest in the name of social justice and racial equality and police brutality and blah, 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 because they have no idea what they're talking about. They see the talking heads on CNN, or they read a headline like the one I just showed you, and then they lose their minds. Because God forbid you look into it a little bit and get the actual facts and the evidence. $1,000 bond. Unbelievable. I wonder what the families of the victims in that parade will have to say to the prosecutor, to the judge, to the whole judicial process there in Wisconsin. I hope they get an earful. I really do. This is unacceptable. So if you want to continue looking like a fool and parroting all of these talking points from the left, for example, with Kyle Rittenhouse, crossing state lines, show me a statute that prohibits me from transporting my firearm into another state. Go ahead. I'm not going to wait, though. I'm not going to hold my breath, because you won't find it. Because it's not there. It doesn't exist. Kyle Rittenhouse was legally possessing his rifle in the state of Wisconsin. If you look up the code, 941.28, I believe it is, gives you all of the elements for that particular statute of why he was legally allowed to carry that rifle that night. All of the evidence points to self-defense. He was attacked. He was chased. He did everything he could to get out of that situation without resorting to shooting, but it didn't work. He had to defend himself. Well, why was Kyle Rittenhouse there? See, this is the thing, is people on the left are always asking the most irrelevant questions. You need to ask better questions. You need to ask relevant, important questions instead of asking why Kyle was there, because we know why he was there. Because the government in Wisconsin and the city of Kenosha didn't do its job. There was a dereliction of duty on the part of the government. They told police officers to stand down. They didn't deploy the National Guard in order to quell the riots and suppress the rioters and prosecute criminals. So instead, private citizens like Kyle Rittenhouse had to travel to Kenosha to help protect private property. And see, the left doesn't like that. The rioters don't like that. They don't like it when you defend yourself, and it makes them angry. So Rosenbaum, Kyle Rittenhouse isn't a very big kid. And what I imagine happened, this is speculation on my part, but what I think happened is that Rosenbaum saw Rittenhouse among all of the people there that were carrying rifles. He saw him as the smaller, easier, weaker target, and that's why he went after him, because he's a coward. And because it was his opportunity to do what he said he was going to do, which was to kill him. And that's why Kyle Rittenhouse was targeted by Rosenbaum, which cascaded into the shooting of Anthony Huber and Gage Grosskreutz. But why was Rosenbaum there? Okay, let's ask that question. Why was he there? He's a serial child rapist. Why isn't he not in prison? Okay, why did he just... Okay, so the prosecutor, Thomas Binger, said that Rosenbaum just kind of wandered into the riot, didn't really know what was going on, just wanted to check it out like it was some sort of carnival, just going down there to get a a scone, you know, and to ride the rides and see what was going on. No, but the actual footage of Rosenbaum caught saying the N-word repeatedly. Okay, he was the only apparent racist there, at least the only one that was caught on camera being racist. Yet BLM is protecting him and the left is lauding him as some kind of hero. I mean, if you don't see what's going on, or if you do see it and you refuse to acknowledge it, you are part of the problem. And we are not friends. At this point, with how divided we are and how crucial this all is, that we stand up to this and turn this over. This has to be shut down. This woke nonsense, these radical, extreme ideologies and policy prescriptions, they have to be stopped. So if you are supporting this, then we're not on the same side. We're enemies. Thomas Binger and the district attorney in Kenosha, Michael Gravely, need to be disbarred. They need to be disbarred. They need to be fired, and possibly even prosecuted. This trend of DAs across the country prosecuting innocent people for the sake of this narrative of white supremacy and systemic racism, it's the epitome of evil and corruption. Kyle Rittenhouse is an 18-year-old kid, and they wanted to put him in prison for life so that they could continue to push this narrative. This is a game that they're playing, and they don't care who they hurt. They don't care whose reputation they tarnish. They don't care how much pain and suffering they cause. It's a game to them, and they need to be held accountable. And accountability to me, in that case, for those particular people, looks like disbarment and termination at the very least. Stop just reading headlines from CNN. Stop reading CNN at all. Stop listening to it. They lie every single day. Nothing that they have said or reported on has been true. At least not that I've seen recently. There are good people in this country and there are bad people. The good people are comprised of whites, blacks, browns, whatever. Same thing with the bad people. Not everything that is bad begins and ends with white people. White people are not the oppressors. They're not standing in your way if you're a person of color. And the same thing goes for the bad people. The bad people are made up of white, brown, black. Same thing. And the reason this is such a good country, the reason the United States of America is the most free and prosperous country in the world at any time, is because of the good white, black, brown people. People of any race, okay, that contribute to the betterment of society, who are competent, who are decent, who are compassionate, who spend their time being pro-social and contributing to the betterment of society and to the country as a whole, to their communities, to their states. Then there's the other side, the antisocial, anti-productive leeches, entitled groups of people like the rioters in Kenosha who spend their days dividing and tearing down. So good and bad are not exclusive traits to any one particular race. Okay, good and bad spread across all demographics, whether you're male, female, white or black, gay or straight. So start asking better questions. Instead of asking why Kyle Rittenhouse was there, ask why the rioters were there. And if you figure out the answer to that question, which is obviously the Jacob Blake incident, instead of asking, well, why did the cops shoot Jacob Blake in the back, instead ask, well, why did Jacob Blake have such an extensive criminal history? Why was he at his girlfriend's house when she had a protection order against him? Why was he trying to kidnap her children? And when the police showed up and told him to stop doing what he was doing, why did he threaten them with a knife? Those are the relevant, important questions. And for the folks at CNN, instead of reporting that police have identified a driver of a vehicle, or the driver of the vehicle, that plowed into participants in a parade, killing 5 and injuring 48, report the important information, like the criminal history of Darrell Brooks and why his bond amount was so low and why he was even out of jail to begin with in order to have the opportunity to do something this horrific. Read past the headlines, start asking better questions. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, hit the notification bell so you get a notification every time I post a new video. And we'll see you next time.